Take each game on its merits there.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Each Game on its Merits, where we go through every single Irish senior international ever played since 1924 under the FAI banner. And you may have heard previously we spoke about the Irish team that went over to the Olympics, and now we've come back from the Olympics fresh from pretty credible performances over in Paris, and we've decided to take on the returning USA Olympic side in Dalymount Park. With me I have Jerry Farrell as per usual. Jerry, great to have you.
Hello everybody, and I should mention we're joined here by Michael Kielty as well. Michael is a lecturer in Dublin Business School, and he's a football historian, a good friend of mine as well. So welcome aboard, Michael. Your opposition analysis today, you're going to be talking about the Americans and some Irish Americans as well.
And we brought out the American flag for just for you, Michael. There you go.
And a very important Dubliner who became American that's involved in this story, and thanks for inviting me on.
No problem. So now we are on the 14th of June, Jerry, and it's Dalymount Park, and a small enough crowd of about 4,000 punters arrive in Dalymount Park to witness the first ever home international between, shall we say, an FAI international side and the US side.
Exactly. So the USA, like ourselves, have been competing in the 1924 Olympics. Like ourselves, we played an additional friendly match over in France against Estonia. They play a game against Poland, which they win 3-2. And like we've said in previous episodes, the FAI officials are doing a bit of schmoozing. There's obviously a good relationship between Ireland and the USA. The USA are one of the countries that has advocated for Ireland's admittance into FIFA. We'll talk about some of the other Irish-American connections with Michael a little bit later. But there's a good fraternal relationship, and the lads from the USA Federation are invited over to Dublin for a game in Dalymount Park. And what this means is this is our first proper home international match.
Right, because the previous ones we'd say against the Welsh League were Irish State League versus the Welsh League.
Yeah, and if you look at that, we have Englishmen like Dave Roberts and Harry Willits playing for the Irish Free State League. So they're players who play in the Irish League here, but they're not Irishmen.
And similar with the Celtic game. So this is the first proper, you might say, international of a fully Irish side versus a fully, if you might say, overseas side. Okay, and the Americans, who, as I said in the previous episode, were suffering from prohibition of the sale of alcohol in America.
The dreaded Volstead Act.
And they were quite happy, I think, after their stint in Paris to come to Dublin and enjoy themselves. And I know a lot of American athletes were encouraged to come to Dublin as well, or Ireland, to take part in the Tailteann Games, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit later. Right, the team that lines out. Jerry, tell me about them.
A lot of similarities with the Olympic team, but there's kind of three additions, and they're relevant ones here, and they're probably players who would have gone in the squad, but they'd played professionally. So if you look at it, you have Frank Collins in goal, who is playing for Jacobs, and he's probably working in the
two Jacobs players. Yes,
but Frank has previously played professionally for Glasgow Celtic, so he's Celtic's reserve keeper for a season or two. Joining the team as well, Tony Hunston, who is playing for a team called Brooklyn, and Brooklyn has nothing to do with Brooklyn, New York. It is named after a now long gone street called Brooklyn Avenue, which is off South Circular Road.
Okay.
And then we have Ned Brooks, who is the centre forward. Ned Brooks is a Bows player, and Bows are amateur. But prior to this, Ned has played for Stockport County in England. He's played for Shelburne, and he's played for Linfield. So he has been a professional. And as I kind of mentioned in previous episodes, you look at the Olympic views on professionalism. You look at a very famous case of Jim Thorpe, where he gets his Olympic medal stripped from him because he's played a couple of games of pro baseball, things like that. So those players couldn't have played under the amateurism rules in the Olympics, so they're added to the team. And Tony Hunston, in fact, he's going to finish up in Brooklyn quite soon. He's going to go over and move to Chelsea within kind of a couple of weeks.
Which makes it even more weird that the FAI don't recognise this currently as a senior international, that you had these players who weren't eligible for the Olympics playing in this game.
Yeah, so you have players who are ex-pros or current pros playing for the Free State side.
So the St James's Gate at Lone Bows contingent are now joined by two players from Jacobs.
And Tony Hunston from Brooklyn, soon to be of Chelsea.
Alright, okay, very good. Right, and we win 3-1.
Yeah, and quite, I don't want to say quite handily, but the kind of descriptions, and Mick might touch on this a bit as well, but like the descriptions of the Americans are being very big, strong, physical specimens, but perhaps not as skilled technically as footballers. And as you said, there's, depending on the reports you read, there's 4,000 or 5,000 at it. It's a little bit of a disappointing crowd. Only £240 in gate money It's out of season, so this is the middle of summer when there was no summer league. It was very much a winter league back at that time. But they're a decent side. We look at some of these players. I mean, Jimmy Douglas will go on to play in the 1930 World Cup. He's the man who will keep the first clean sheet in World Cup history. So he's playing for a team called the Newark Skeeters. Fantastic name, isn't it? And if you look at the...
Half of these lads aren't American, by the way.
Oh yeah, well there's...
Mick has made a gesture there. Mick is... no. Fake news. Fake news.
But as the opposition analysis, they were all American citizens at the time.
Okay, but a lot of them were not
born. There were two who were born overseas, and the manager
is Scottish.
Was Scottish. George Collins, ex-Strathclyde centre forward. And of course, the president of the Football Association, American Football Association, he's not born in America. But the question of identity is a fluid thing at the time in America, and that feeds into the more pure nature of these amateur sportsmen who turned up to play your Irish Free State Ireland team in Dalymount Park on June 14, 24. The president of the USFA was an old school Victorian amateur adherent, and went to great lengths to ensure that the Olympic amateur spirit was upheld, and these players were thorough amateurs, and some of them naturalised US citizens, but that's the story of America.
And there is a professional football taking place in America. The ASL has emerged as a professional league around this time.
Yeah, and this is the interesting thing, that it was as meaningful for the US as it was for the Irish Free State, and it was all bound up in symbolism as well. But this was the beginning of a golden age of American soccer, outside of England, Scotland, and somewhat Wales. Shelburne and Shamrock Rovers, who gave coinage and paid these players to play football. America was the other country, and it set up the American Soccer League in 1921, and it was self-sustaining, big crowds, highly paid foreigners coming in.
And we've talked about this before, because 1924 there's a team set up called Philadelphia Celtic, which is marketing itself as an ethnic Irish club. And they pay for some very high-profile Irish players to go over.
They do indeed, and it does attract Irish players, English players, Scottish players, right into after the Olympics. But this is the start of a golden era. But there was also a healthy amateur tradition, and the year before, an amateur cup competition was established by Peter Peel, who was the president of the USFA. And the whole plan was that the winning team would go to the Olympic Games.
Kind of like the All-Ireland sort of thing, the club champion at the time. If you won your county, then you represented your county in the All-Ireland.
Yeah, but that didn't work out, and they didn't really find out it wasn't going to work out until very late. So preparation for the whole Olympics and the game itself didn't work out, because they found out that actually any of the winning teams they wouldn't have. A lot of them were not American. In fact, the winning team, Fleischer Yarn of the cup, had two Irishmen in it, and the losers were the Swedish American, who weren't even all Swedish or American. They had two Irish lads in it as well. So, but they were that keen and that adhering to their amateur code that they had to quickly set up trial games.
So very similar to what was the Irish the FAI were doing.
Exactly, yeah. And look, in the American newspapers, the reports state after the game that there were top-notch professional players on the Irish team. Now, I know there were maybe lads getting paid here, but I don't think they were making a living from playing football.
No.
Professionalism in Ireland, I think, was slightly different. But notwithstanding that, Fleischer Yarn got to the quarterfinals of the National Cup, and that's against professional teams, beat by Bethlehem Steel, who were the... And
look at your Fleischer Yarn have 4 players represented in that starting 11 against Ireland.
They do. They have 4 players, and they play a lot of football, and you're right to say that they had their own style, and it was somewhat fossilised from a previous era, and it was physical, but it did feature these players were athletes, and I can't say Dirty Duncan and all the lads were exactly from the photographs.
So there's a misconception then about American football, that it's American soccer, that it's a kind of a more recent thing that the American football, because actually America won the rugby Olympic gold medal in that tournament. So between soccer and rugby, you know, we would assume that these were completely alien to Americans at that time. Not so.
Not
so
at all.
soccer was actually doing quite well.
Their soccer history is older than Dublin's soccer history, and their rugby history is even older. And actually, interesting you mentioned rugby. You know, the French newspapers had America down as the dark horses to win it, on the basis that the rugby team came over and you know, trounced the French. Now the American team at the Olympics were booed and hollered because of the rugby team and because of a reputation that the rugby team had got in Paris of, you know, saloon fighters and rough on the pitch and etc. But my team that I'm representing today, there's no evidence that any of them happened in Paris.
Now, so there was. Tell us more about this previous footballer, Irish-born, Mayo-born Joe Lydon footballer who actually represented an American soccer team in the 1904 Olympics.
Yeah, so he's one of 3 Irish footballers to have got an Olympic medal. And in 1924, it was an exposed player, Oliver St. John Gogarty, who got it for. What was it for?
We'll do a little brief aside. So 1924 Olympics, Ireland don't go home empty-handed. We have 2 medals. We have.
We roared them off the pitch.
We have a silver medal in painting. Jack B. Yates.
Absolutely.
For the Liffey swim. Lovely painting.
Ramped it.
And Oliver St. John Gogarty, who won a Leinster Senior Cup with Bohemians in the 1890s.
Also played for Preston North End reserves.
Exactly.
So he's won, but there's one before.
He won. Hold on, what did he win then?
So he wins a bronze medal for poetry.
Absolutely.
And his poetry, his poem is called Ode to the Taunton Games, which is interesting because we're going to talk about the Taunton Games in soccer in a little bit.
Yeah, so the first guy is Lydon. He was a boxer based in St. Louis, born in Mayo. Boxes his way, he gets the silver medal. And but he was also involved in football in St. Louis. St. Louis was a hotbed of soccer, and he played for the, I think they're called the Christian Brothers Football Club.
Yeah.
And so he turns out for the game and a replay of the same game and wins a bronze medal.
Traditionalists now listen to this would be horrified that a Mayo man from playing for a Christian Brother college won a soccer medal.
And
then a Mayo man winning a football medal.
Yeah, it was unusual. They win a lot of bronze.
They played a foreign game in a foreign country. 2 wrongs might make a right.
Amen.
In this case,
okay.
But yes, so there's a deep history, but they had their own way of playing, and I think that's what the football tournament found out, that nobody knew how everybody else played.
Okay.
And the Americans were seen as kind of like, well, and they were physical. The Estonians gave out about them, the crowds gave out about them, the journalists gave out about them. They got booed, but they had it that but they played plenty of football. There was more tournaments, more football games than the Irish players were playing.
Born in England, Arthur Wood was born in England. And we had an Andy Stratton was born in Scotland, who played for New York Giants.
Played for New York Giants, briefly. A few of these players went on the following year to play professional after the Olympic Games.
Like the New York Giants were the same as the baseball team. They're now the San Francisco Giants.
That's right.
What was common at the time was baseball teams looking for an out-of-season sport.
Absolutely,
turn baseball diamonds into soccer pitches.
Yeah, and Flesher Yarn, who won the Amber Cup, they turned professional and joined the soccer league the following year with a number of these players. But you're right. We talk about Jacobs and St. James's Gate, the Biscuit Men and the Brewers, and that kind of the works teams, and that was a feature of American football. So we had the Distance All Works, Ray Hornberger. Our centre back there for
our centre back. Did you say our centre back?
Yeah, for USA.
Well, you got your asses handed to you in this game, though, David Brackett. 3-1.
They were called the Sawmen, but they had a great time in Poland in advance, and they very little time.
So you're saying they're a bit worse for wear when they're trying to get over.
Yeah, injuries.
Really?
Injuries.
Is that well?
Tired, emotional.
There's great footage of them actually going down, which I assume assume is North Circular Road on the back of 4 horse and carts with their legs hanging off the ends.
That's right.
After the game,
yeah,
in their gear.
Now we should mention the game itself because we have a very prominent player, Ned Brooks. Bow centre forward, the guy who mentioned previously of Stockport County, Shelburne, Linfield, and so on. He ended up in Linfield because he was in the British Army, got posted in Northern Ireland to Belfast during the war.
It's perfectly legitimate to play for Linfield.
Yes, it is. But Ned Brooks is the first man to score a hat-trick for Ireland because he scores a hat-trick in this game and apparently runs riot. It's lamented that he couldn't represent us at the Olympics. And the goal we do concede seems to be a bit of an error from Frank Collins, the Jacobs keeper, in the goal. There's kind of a hopeful ball over the top. He sees it late and it kind of bounces in.
He was taking the biscuit.
Yeah, taking the biscuit.
I think it was the Daily Man Bobble, isn't it? The hump down the pitch.
Yeah. The camera.
The Daily Man Bobble, was that the problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ned Brooks, we should give him his due. He's the first man to score a hat-trick, and probably the only man apart from David Kelly to score a hat-trick on his debut, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe John Joe Flood.
David Connolly came close to David Connolly's score. We'll look into that. Yeah. Possibly not. He's certainly early on in his Ireland career. He scored a hat trick. Okay, very good. So he scores a hat trick, and so America are soundly beaten, trounced in this game. Tell me about the pre-game shenanigans, because there's a bit of an oddness about what the American team do. They arrive out on the pitch. One American player has a large stars and stripes.
Yeah, and look, this is bound up with symbolism.
Kind of a pageantry of
yes, and I'll share the photographs. You might share them.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put them up on the channel.
Yeah, it was highly symbolic to see the American flag. Sam arriving onto the main pitch. But the manager or the president of the US of A who accompanied the team, who led the parade out, was Peter Peel. He was born in Dublin, so it was very poignant for him to do that. And then the playing of the Star Spangled Banner, and then the dipping of the flag, and that's the dipping of the American flag is governed by American law, and that doesn't happen, and there needs to be a particular reason for it. So there's the famous example of, I think it was the London Olympics in the 1896 or whatever, where they refused to dip the flag for the British monarch, but it was held by an Irishman, of course, who refused to do so. But it was dipped. Really? In this case, it was.
So it's dipped. A mark of respect.
It's a mark of respect, and it's seldom afforded.
So sorry, it's dipped to give prominence to the other national flag.
Exactly.
I understand. Okay.
And that's a very unusual occurrence. There was a rah rah rah, which was misinterpreted as an Indian war cry by the Irish press. But it was a huddle and a American rah rah rah. But it was classified as something. But I think that was the year of the Wild West and the start of the cowboy movies and the cowboy novels and all that.
Like even Buffalo Bill had been touring in Paris. Not that long before.
Yeah.
The Paris Olympics.
So there's that symbolism, and then after the game they were paraded down North Circular Road.
Yeah, and with the flag actually on one of the horses and cars.
Exactly. And then to the Gresham Hotel, and they had acquaintances here. Who brought them out on jaunts in motor cars and stuff like that. But there was a great celebration in the restaurant of Cleary's Hotel after the game, and a number of speeches were made by the president of the American Football Association, Peel, who was born 2 blocks away from. He was born on Abbey Street.
And you said he was a very ardent Irish nationalist. He didn't forget his roots.
Yes, and he was involved in fundraising and in political correspondence and lobbying directly to the White House, to the president on behalf of Irish, especially during the conscription crisis. And this was over 3-4 years, and he was, he was a civic person of note in Chicago. Welcomed Redmond, Plunkett, Tip O'Connor, vice presidents to speak at. He was brought because he was also president of the Irish Chicago Fellowship, which was that's hosted by Michael D. Higgins, Robinson, all of our presidents, and Sean T. O'Kelly. So he was heavily involved in Irish politics and local politics while being president of the FA and running. And he was a doctor as well, running his own medical
busy guy
practice. Yeah. So it was quite meaningful for him to see the Irish flag on the pitch. He did enter the dressing room at half time and gee up the players to get the finger out and to beat these Irish.
No great effect.
So well, in one way he was pro-American, in another way he was quite proud Dubliner. To return home.
So it says here in this book, No Foreign Game by James Quinn, that for the first time in a soccer international, the national anthem played was Around the Vian, the Soldier's Song, and thanks to a hat-trick from Ned Brooks of Bohemians, the home team 1-3-1, recording the Free State's first win on home soil. For the watching public, Jerry, the 4,000 or 5,000 who were there, we've arrived. Yeah. Previous games were like a league side. They possibly have heard of the success, if you like, of the team in the Olympics. But this is now on home soil, a proper full international against America, which is a big international name, if you like, in terms of their country status in the world. And Ireland have played this game under the Irish flag, singing the Soldier's Song with the tricolour. We've arrived,
and we're wearing green jerseys as well.
We're in green jerseys, and we've won 3-1.
So this is it. This is the real beginning of home internationals. Dalymount Park as the home of the Irish national team.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about it in the next episode. It's just about attempts to organise other games. It's going to be 3 long years.
For 3 years,
before we get another home
Italy
international.
And we'll talk about that again. Yeah, and then but in that period, the Taunton games, which we cannot under-emphasise, if you like. We have to give this is a major move from the Free State government to put Ireland on the international sporting map by having something that would almost rival the Olympic Games.
This is huge. Cumann na Gael, this is a big statement of intent. A lot of the games are held in Croke Park. They install floodlights, so if I've actually seen some of them. There's a bulb that's bigger than a man's head, and they had thousands of them strung along the roof of the stands. You have people turning out in historic costume. So to explain, the Charlton Games is based on an idea of an Irish ancient set of games like the Olympics that takes place in County Meath, and it's being revived by the Cumann na Gael government. And this is a huge statement of intent. It is and they've deliberately timed it that they're getting people coming back from the Olympics, and it's described as an Irish race games, and it's supposed to be for the diaspora. But you have people like Johnny Weissmuller, who later finds fame as Tarzan, winning the swimming medal. Not very Irish. Not many Irish
in Dublin Zoo.
In the pond in Dublin Zoo. Yes. There's no swimming pool, so he swims the pond in Dublin Zoo.
I love it.
But it's huge. So you have everything. You have all sorts of sports, athletics, competitions, chess,
but not soccer.
But not
soccer.
No garrison games.
No garrison games.
And we're coming back to our friend JJ Keane, who we mentioned before, who was a talented athlete, who was a talented Gaelic football player.
But a bigot.
He's not a soccer man, and he's the one involved in a lot of the organisation of the actual games themselves, and he's very much a no. And to say the Taunton Games happens in 24, it happens in 28, and it happens kind of.
Fianna Fáil didn't like it because it was a Cumann na Gael idea.
It kind of phases out in 32.
It cost a lot of money, but they had a greater participation at that than they had in terms of sort of sportsmen, if you like.
Yeah, more people took part than in the
Paris
Games, which is amazing.
But ironically, the only guy who comes back with one of the medal winners who writes the ode to the Taunton Games, the medal winner from the Olympics, who wins his medal on the basis of what he had written in terms of the Taunton Games, is a soccer player, Oliver St. John Gogarty.
And
you may have heard, because if you ever bought an overpriced pint in Temple Bar,
he's not just
allegedly overpriced.
He's not just a Temple Bar pub, exactly. A fascinating guy, obviously. You do a whole podcast on him, and he is a big soccer man. As you mentioned before, he had a brief period at Preston North End. He plays.
He's a senator in the Free State Senate. Yeah,
he performs Michael Collins's quasi-autopsy, many other things. But he also speaks in the Shannon about the entertainment tax, which we mentioned before in terms of the Glasgow
we'll come back to
match.
That. Yeah,
and he basically says that Gaelic football should be double taxed, because if you're going to tax rugby and you're going to tax football, you should double tax Gaelic football, because it's a bastard of the two.
Hybrid, what we say these days. Hybrid. We don't play America again until 1979. I'm interested in that we actually don't play another non-European team until 1951. Most of our internationals from then on are actually against European teams. So it's not until 79. So the Irish USA soccer entanglement has been a bit of a tenuous one in more recent years. Would you say, Mick? Or there had certainly a big gap between 1924 and 79. Anyway.
Yeah,
but there were some Irish-born players. Sorry, this is the reason for my question.
There were in the 60s.
Cornelius Casey, Kerry-born, played an international was an international for America in 1954. Kenny Flynn was from Dundalk, I think, 1955. Ed Kelly. Yeah, from Dublin, 1975. These are Irish-born.
Yeah, and we've had our chat about Mick O'Brien before as well, who is an Irish international who may be American.
They're Irish people, Irish football players have been going over to America since and playing soccer since and winning American Cups and all of that.
Three from the north here: Dale Irvine, Cecil Moore, and Brian Quinn in more recent years.
Yeah, and going over to play football, I think there's a lot to be said for some of the initiatives around scholarships to American colleges for soccer, not just athletics, which had existed for a long period of time, the Eamon Coughlin period and earlier, or a Delaney period. But the extension of soccer scholarships led to a more regular movement of soccer talent from here. One of my relations took advantage of that. But in terms of why we didn't play America until, I think it's more happenstance than any kind of conspiracy. As you said, we've seldom played anybody from outside of Europe.
I should mention we have in 1924 there is a quasi opportunity to play a touring South African side, but the FA don't take that advantage, and Bohemians play them instead, and they lose 4-2. Now it's basically they make the decision that they can't get the release of any players from England. It's the very start of the season, so they send Bowes out. Ned Brooks actually scores twice against them.
You say Ned Brooks, man.
But South Africa win 4-2, and then in 1933 there is a touring South American side. It's a combination. It's called the Combinado del Pacifico, and it's a combination of Peruvian and Chilean players come to play. The first stop on the tour is Dynamo Park in 1933, and they played Bohemians as well.
Right. Well, Ned Brooks does not have a senior. His family did not have a senior international cap for his efforts, and that we need to sort
that needs to be corrected.
Need to sort that out. Well, that is absolutely fascinating stuff. Of course, there's a huge number of current women's internationals with American backgrounds. Cordy Brosnan, Sinead Farrelly. That link is obviously still quite strong in international football. Mick, thanks so much for coming on.
No, thanks guys.
Really enjoyed it.
Very much.
Now, our next episode is 2 years. We have to wait. Well, not for the next episode, but 2 years in terms of international football. There is a glorious 3-0 win. Again, I'm wrong. Am I wrong? I'm not wrong.
Glorious 3-0 win
for Italy. For Italy. There's a glorious 3-0 for Italy against Ireland in Turin. And that, for some reason, is the game that's recognised by the FAI as the first international. But there's interesting people who lined up that day. Liam Brady's granduncle Frank Brady, and a number of other particularly interesting characters who we will have chats about on our next episode of Each Game on Its Merits.